It all started on a quiet evening in a small, peaceful village, far from the noise of big cities. This village was surrounded by wide fields and tall mountains. People there lived simple lives, mostly farming or working in nearby towns. One man, who spent most of his time outdoors and loved working with radios, noticed something strange that night. He wasn't a scientist or a famous expert, just an ordinary man with a curious mind. As the sun went down and the stars began to shine, this man sat by his small radio, hoping to catch some news from far away. He liked listening to voices from other countries, even if he didn't understand all the languages. But that night the radio didn't work the way it usually did. Instead of clear voices, there was a weird crackling sound. Sometimes the radio made strange noises that didn't come from any station. The man tried to fix it, thinking maybe there was a problem with his equipment, but nothing helped. Suddenly, the whole village went dark. The power went out completely. No lights, no electricity, no sound from the usual machines and devices. People were confused and a little scared. In a place where the night is already very quiet, this sudden blackout made everything feel even stranger. As the night grew deeper, some people looked up at the sky. They saw something they would never forget, a group of bright lights floating silently over the mountaintops. These lights moved slowly, in ways no airplane or helicopter could. They glowed with different colors, blue, green, and red, but there was no sound at all. No buzzing, no humming, nothing. The next morning, the village was buzzing with stories. Everyone was talking about the lights. Some said they looked like stars, but bigger and closer. Others thought they were fireworks, but there was no celebration, no noise. No one could explain what they saw. The man with the radio, who had been awake all night, wanted to understand. He walked toward the mountains, trying to find any sign of what had passed over them. Before he could get far, loud helicopters appeared in the sky. They circled above the village and the nearby forest. Soldiers and officials arrived quickly, setting up barriers and telling people to stay inside their homes. No one was allowed near the mountains. The man and the villagers watched with worry and curiosity. They didn't know if these people were there to protect them or to hide something important. News did not spread fast. The village was remote, and the government did not share any details. The man tried to send messages with his radio, but the strange interference continued. It was like someone or something did not want the world to know what was happening. This was only the beginning. Over the next few days, similar things were reported in other parts of the world. In a cold region of Asia, a group of herders saw the same strange lights in the night sky. In a forest near the Arctic Circle, scientists working on research stations noticed their instruments stopped working for hours. In Africa, villagers reported sudden power failures and sightings of silent, glowing objects flying overhead. Everywhere, the patterns were the same. Lights moving silently, power and communication systems failing, and people feeling a strange mix of fear and wonder. The world's media started to pick up the stories, but many reports were quickly dismissed or ignored. Some journalists tried to dig deeper, but they found official offices closed or unwilling to talk. One scientist, a woman studying the stars and space signals, began collecting these stories from around the globe. She was not a believer in aliens or myths, but the evidence puzzled her. The strange signals, the blackouts, and the similar descriptions from different cultures suggested something unusual was happening. People everywhere began asking questions. Were these just natural events, strange weather, or could it be something more? The scientist shared her findings with other experts, hoping to find answers. But the more she studied, the less clear the picture became. In the small village, life slowly returned to normal, but the memories of that night stayed with the man and his neighbors. The mountain area was still off limits, and no one dared to explore it. But some villagers said they could feel a difference in the air, a quiet tension, like the land itself was watching and waiting. Little did they know, what they saw was only a glimpse of something much larger. Something that had come to Earth, but for reasons no one understood. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the strange visit would end. The visitors would vanish without a trace, leaving behind only questions, and a silent promise that they might never return. After the strange night in the quiet village, things began to change, not just there, but all over the world. People in very different places started to see similar strange lights in the sky. It was like something big was happening everywhere at the same time. In a cold and distant part of Asia, a group of herders were watching their animals when suddenly, The sky lit up with colors they had never seen before. The lights moved slowly, almost like they were watching the people below. The herders did not speak much about it, but deep inside they felt both scared and amazed. Far away in a frozen land near the Arctic, scientists working on their research noticed something odd. Their machines, which were supposed to send signals back to their labs, stopped working for hours. There was no explanation for this. The signals just disappeared, and for a time the scientists were cut off from the outside world. It was as if something was blocking their communication. Meanwhile, in a small village in Africa, the power suddenly went out during the night. People woke up confused and afraid because this had never happened before. As they looked up at the sky, they saw glowing objects silently floating overhead. These objects didn't make any sound, but their colors changed from blue to green and red, lighting up the darkness in an eerie way. The villagers whispered stories to each other, wondering if these were signs of spirits or something else. But one thing was clear to everyone: they had never seen anything like it before. Back in the quiet village from the first night, the man who had heard the strange radio signals was listening carefully to the news. Slowly, reports of similar events started coming from many other parts of the world. It wasn't just a local problem. It was something bigger affecting the whole planet. But strangely, the governments and officials stayed mostly quiet. They gave few answers and sometimes even denied the events had happened. In a city far from these villages and research stations, a scientist spent her days studying the stars and signals coming from space. She was careful and serious, and she did not believe in stories about aliens visiting Earth. But when she started to hear about the strange signals and power failures from different countries, she became curious. She collected all the reports and began to look for a pattern. The lights, the blackouts, the broken communication, all seemed connected. She spent many nights working alone, staring at her computer screen, comparing reports and signals from around the world. Something about the strange interference did not make sense. The signals were too organized to be natural, yet too strange to be explained by anything she knew. She shared her findings with other scientists, hoping to learn more, but even they were puzzled. No one could explain what was happening. Meanwhile, ordinary people in towns and cities everywhere began to notice small changes. Birds that usually flew south for the winter stopped moving or changed their paths. Some crops and farms started to wilt overnight for no reason, while others grew faster and stronger than usual. It was as if the earth itself was reacting to something unseen. Despite the strange events, life went on. People went to work, children went to school, and the world continued moving forward. But many felt uneasy, like they were waiting for something more to happen. The man from the village who had seen the lights first kept thinking about what he had witnessed. He walked the fields and hills every day trying to find answers, but the mountains stayed silent. At night, the stars looked different to him. The sky felt heavier, almost as if it held a secret just beyond reach. Some nights he thought he saw shapes moving in the darkness, but when he looked closer, there was nothing there. He was not alone in these feelings. Around the world, people who had seen the lights or experienced the strange events shared stories online and in small gatherings. They did not know each other, but they felt connected by the mystery. The scientist continued her research, becoming more convinced that something had come to Earth, but not to harm anyone. It was as if these visitors had come quietly without making noise or destruction. The lights were not like the flying machines we know, and the power failures did not cause lasting damage. Instead, it felt like they were watching, learning, and maybe even warning. She began to wonder what the visitors wanted. Were they concerned about the changes happening on Earth? Were they trying to understand humans and their world before making contact? These questions haunted her day and night. She wrote papers and spoke to colleagues, hoping to find clues in ancient texts or signals from space. At the same time, governments became more secretive. In many places, military forces increased their presence near the sites where the lights had been seen. Some people were not allowed to talk about their experiences. Rumors spread that authorities were hiding the truth, but no clear answers came. The man from the village noticed that after the visitors appeared, the natural world around him started to act strangely. Animals behaved differently and the weather seemed unpredictable. Yet the villagers tried to keep their lives normal. They planted their crops, raised their families, and helped each other through the changes. Still, every now and then, a quiet fear would settle over the village at night. People would close their windows tightly and whisper stories about the lights in the sky. Children asked their parents if the visitors would ever come back, but no one had an answer. In the cities and towns far away, life went on with the same questions and worries. Was Earth being watched? Was this the start of something new? Or were the visitors just passing through, never to return? The scientist's research took a surprising turn when she discovered a strange pattern in the symbols left behind near the places where the lights had appeared. These symbols were not like any language she had studied. They were shapes and numbers arranged in ways that seemed to describe the universe itself. She shared her discovery with a small group of experts, hoping to understand if this was a message. Despite all the mystery, the visitor ship stayed silent and never landed openly. They did not speak or make contact in a way humans could understand easily. It was as if they chose to remain distant, watching quietly from afar. People who had close experiences with the lights often described a feeling rather than words. A calm, peaceful presence, as if the visitors meant no harm but had a purpose beyond human understanding. The man from the village remembered feeling something like that on the night he saw the lights. It was not fear or anger, but a strange sense of being observed and judged. As weeks passed, the world tried to make sense of it all. Some people became hopeful, thinking the visitors might bring new knowledge or help protect the Earth. Others felt worried that the silence meant something worse, that humanity was being watched like an experiment. Scientists continued to search for answers, always careful not to jump to conclusions. She knew that the truth might be hard to find, hidden in signals and symbols beyond human reach. But she also believed that understanding this event could change the future of all people on Earth. In the quiet village, the man looked up at the sky every night. He waited, hoping to see the lights again or to understand the meaning behind their visit. For now, the world was full of questions but few answers, and the visitors stayed hidden, watching silently from the darkness, waiting for what might come next. After the strange lights disappeared from the skies, life went back to something close to normal, but the memory of that night stayed with many people, especially with the man from the village where it all began. He found himself thinking more and more about what he had seen and heard. Even though days turned into weeks, he felt like something had changed inside him. One evening, unable to sleep, he decided to go back toward the mountains where the lights had hovered. The village was quiet and the stars shone brightly above. As he walked through the fields and trees, he noticed the air was still and calm, almost too calm, like the world was holding its breath. When he reached the edge of the forest near the mountain, he saw something unusual, a large circle on the ground. The grass and plants inside the circle were flattened, as if something very heavy had touched the earth. But there was no sign of a machine or footprints. Instead, strange marks were burned into the soil like symbols or drawings, but unlike anything he had ever seen. Curious and a little scared, he touched the ground and felt a strange warmth. He knelt down and looked closely at the symbols. They didn't look like any writing he knew, but somehow they felt important, like they were trying to tell a story. That night, as he lay in bed, the man began to have dreams. In his dreams, he saw a tall figure standing near him. The figure didn't speak with words, but shared images and feelings directly into his mind. It showed him the earth, its oceans, forests, and cities, and then showed pictures of people, busy, hopeful, sometimes angry or sad. It was like the figure was trying to tell him a message without using words. The message was clear. The earth was in danger, not from aliens or war, but from humans themselves. The figure showed images of polluted rivers, burning forests, and animals disappearing. It was a warning, but also a hope, that people could change and save the planet if they wanted to. The man woke up feeling different. He wasn't scared anymore. Instead, he felt a strong connection to the earth and a responsibility to protect it. Over the next few days, he shared his experience with a few trusted neighbors, but most people didn't believe him. They thought he was imagining things or dreaming too much. Meanwhile, around the world, more people began to report similar experiences. In different countries, people said they had been visited in their dreams or in quiet moments by strange but calm beings. These beings did not use words, but instead shared feelings and images. Many of those who saw them described the same warning about caring for the planet. Some people were frightened by these experiences, but others felt comforted. It was as if the visitors were not enemies but watchers. offering a chance for humans to think deeply about their future. Back in her laboratory, the scientist who had been studying the strange signals from space learned about these encounters. She was amazed to find a connection between the symbols found on the ground and the images people described. The symbols seemed to be a kind of language, not one made of words, but of ideas and feelings. She spent long hours working to understand this new language. With the help of other experts, she discovered that the symbols contained patterns related to math and nature, things that all living beings could understand, no matter where they came from. The scientist began to believe that these visitors were not here to harm, but to teach or to warn. They came quietly, without destruction, sharing messages through symbols and dreams. It was a peaceful contact, unlike anything humans had expected from stories about aliens. In many places, governments were still silent. But some people inside the military and science communities quietly shared their own experiences. They reported strange feelings of calm when near the sites of the visits and unexplained changes in technology and nature. The man from the village noticed changes in himself as well. His health improved and he felt stronger and clearer in his thoughts. He began to draw the symbols from the circle near the mountain. Sometimes he would wake up at night unable to remember where he was, but always holding a piece of paper with strange shapes. His neighbors started to notice something unusual too. The crops in his fields grew faster and healthier than before, and animals that had been sick began to recover. People whispered that the man had been touched by something special. Though the man tried to share his story, many people still doubted him. The world was filled with noise, news about politics, disasters, and everyday problems. The quiet message from the visitors was easy to miss, but for those who listened carefully, the meaning was clear. Humans had been given a chance to see themselves from another point of view. The visitors came not to conquer or destroy, but to watch and warn. They hoped that people would understand the importance of taking care of their home. Across the globe, groups of people began to form. Scientists, farmers, artists, and others who wanted to learn from the messages. They studied the symbols and shared their own experiences. Slowly, a new conversation started, one about respect for nature, peace among humans, and curiosity about the universe. Yet the visitors remained silent and distant. They did not come forward openly, did not speak in words, and did not stay long. Their visits were brief but deep, like a whisper in a noisy room that only some could hear. The man from the village continued his quiet work, drawing symbols and telling stories to those willing to listen. He believed that one day more people would understand what had happened and what it meant for their future. The scientist, too, kept searching. She knew that understanding this contact was not just about science, it was about hope. Hope that humanity could change, learn, and grow beyond its mistakes. As the days turned into months, the world slowly adjusted to the memory of the visitors. People lived with the question in their hearts. What did the visitors want? Why had they come and then disappeared so suddenly? The answer was still unknown. But one thing was clear. Earth had been watched, studied, and maybe judged. The visitors had left behind symbols, feelings, and warnings that would stay with humanity forever. And so, the man from the village looked up at the stars each night, feeling a connection to something greater than himself. He waited, not in fear, but with hope, for the day when the visitors might return, or when humans would finally understand the message they had been given. After the strange visit and the quiet warnings, something even more puzzling happened. Just as suddenly as the visitors had appeared, they vanished completely. No more lights in the sky, no more strange symbols, no more unusual signals. It was as if they had never been here at all. The people who had seen the lights, who had heard the silent messages, and who had felt the change, were left with questions and silence. The world tried to return to normal, but the memory of those nights stayed alive in many minds. In the village where it all started, the man who had seen the strange circle near the mountain continued to think deeply about what had happened. His life had changed in ways he couldn't explain. His health improved in a way that surprised even him. The aches and pains that had bothered him for years were gone. He felt more energy, and his mind was clearer than ever before. But with this change came something strange. Sometimes he would wake up in the middle of the night not knowing where he was. In his hands he would find pieces of paper with symbols he didn't remember drawing. The symbols matched those burned into the ground near the mountain. The villagers watched this quietly. They didn't understand what was happening, but they could see the man was different. Some felt afraid, others were curious. They whispered that maybe the visitors had left a part of themselves with him. Far from the village, the scientist who had been studying the signals and the symbols found new and puzzling things. Using powerful computers and telescopes, she discovered that the areas where the visitors had appeared were changing. The soil seemed richer and more alive. Plants grew faster and stronger than anywhere else nearby. Even animals acted differently. Birds that had once flown away at certain times of the year stayed longer, and some species appeared that had never been seen before. The scientist called this the visitor effect, a strange gift left behind by those who had come. But no one knew why. Governments and military forces around the world stayed quiet. They increased security near the places where the visitors had been, but gave no answers to the public. People who tried to share what they saw or experienced were often ignored, told they were imagining things, or even threatened to stay silent. This silence made many people angry and scared. Was there something being hidden? Were the visitors really a threat, or was the truth simply too strange for most people to believe? The scientist tried to stay calm and focused. She gathered a small group of researchers, farmers, and everyday people who wanted to understand the symbols and the strange changes in nature. Together, they worked to find meaning in the signs left behind. One day, the man from the village made a surprising discovery. Near the circle on the mountain, he found a stone carved with one of the symbols. It looked old and worn, but it was clearly made by someone or something with a deep understanding of the earth. He brought the stone to the scientist, hoping it could help her solve the mystery. She studied the carving and realized that the symbol was part of a larger message, one that spoke of balance and care for the planet. The man and the scientist shared their findings with the small group. Slowly, word spread about the importance of protecting nature, understanding the delicate balance of life, and learning from the visitor's silent message. Meanwhile, the man's health and abilities continued to improve. His vision became sharper and his senses more alert. People said he seemed to glow with an inner light. Some even believed he had become a kind of messenger, carrying the visitor's wisdom to those willing to listen. But one morning, without warning, the man disappeared. His home was empty, with only the carved stone left behind. His neighbors searched for him everywhere, but he was gone, as if he had vanished into thin air. The scientist and the group were shocked and saddened. They believed the man had been chosen for something special, that his disappearance was part of the larger mystery. Even though he was gone, his story inspired many to continue learning and caring for the earth. The symbols he left behind were studied and shared, becoming a quiet reminder of the visitor's visit. Years passed, and the places once touched by the visitors became known for strange and beautiful things. Clean rivers flowed where pollution had once been thick. Forests grew strong and full of life. Communities near these places learned to live more gently with nature. The world changed slowly but surely, as if the visitor's silent message had been heard by the earth itself. Yet, the biggest question remained. Why had the visitors never returned? Were they waiting for something? Or had their brief visit been enough? Some believed the visitors were guardians, checking to see if humanity could care for its home. Others thought they were explorers, curious but cautious, not ready to make open contact. The scientist often wondered if the visitors were still watching from afar, waiting for humans to prove themselves worthy. Despite the many questions, the story of the visit, the strange symbols, and the man from the village stayed alive in the hearts of many people. It became a symbol of hope and responsibility, a reminder that Earth is fragile and that its future depends on how people choose to live. The silence left by the visitors was not empty. It was full of meaning, waiting to be understood by those who looked up at the stars and dreamed of a better world. And so life went on, forever changed by a quiet visit from beings who came, watched, and left behind a silent promise that the future of Earth is still in the hands of those who live here. After the man from the village disappeared, many people felt a strange emptiness, like a part of the story had been lost. But life around the places where the visitors had appeared did not return to the way it had been before. Instead, those places began to change in small but meaningful ways. The rivers became cleaner, the air fresher, and the forests grew thicker and healthier. People who lived nearby felt calmer and more connected to the world around them. Communities started to notice these changes and began to take better care of the earth. They planted more trees, protected animals, and tried to stop pollution. People shared stories about the visitors and the man from the village, reminding each other that the earth needed their help. In cities far from the quiet village, life was still busy and noisy, but even there, some people felt the impact of the visitors' message. Environmental groups grew stronger, and many began to speak about living more simply and caring for the planet. Children learned about the strange lights in the sky and the symbols left behind, treating these stories as lessons about respect and responsibility. The scientist, who had spent years studying the signals and symbols, continued her work with renewed hope. She believed that the visitors had not just come to warn but also to inspire. The symbols seemed to carry a message of balance between technology and nature, between progress and care, between people and the world they live in. She shared her findings with schools and communities, helping others to understand that the future of Earth depended on the choices humans made every day. The strange symbols became a sign of a new beginning, a reminder that humans were not alone in the universe. At the same time, strange new discoveries were made. In several places around the world, people found small stones and objects buried in the ground. These objects were not like anything made by humans. They seemed to be gifts left by the visitors, smooth, glowing stones that felt warm to the touch and seemed to hum softly with energy. Scientists studied these stones and found that they had unusual properties. They could store energy and seemed to interact with plants and animals in positive ways. When placed near crops, the plants grew stronger and healthier. When held, the stones seemed to calm anxious animals and people. People began to carry these stones with them, believing they were connected to the visitors. They became symbols of hope and peace, reminders that there was more to the universe than what people could see or understand. In the middle of all this, stories continued to spread about the man from the village. Some said he had gone to live with the visitors, chosen to be a messenger between humans and the stars. Others believed he had become part of the earth itself, a guardian watching over the planet from a secret place. His story inspired people to listen more carefully to the world around them, to notice the small signs of life and the quiet messages hidden in nature. It made them think about how they could live more kindly and protect the earth for future generations. Despite the hope and the changes, many people still wondered about the visitors themselves. Why had they never come back? What had they learned about humanity? Were they watching still, waiting for the right time to return? The scientist often thought about these questions late at night. She looked up at the stars and wondered if the visitors were somewhere far away, watching quietly and hoping that humans would find the right path. Meanwhile, the world faced many challenges. Climate changes, conflicts, and pollution did not disappear overnight. But with the visitors' message in their hearts, more people began to work together to solve these problems. They planted trees, cleaned rivers, shared resources, and tried to live with more respect for the earth. The visitors had shown that it was possible to change, to grow, and to care deeply for the world. Their silent visit became a symbol of what humanity could become, a species not just focused on itself, but connected to the larger universe. As the years passed, the stories of the visitors became part of human history. They were told to children as lessons, passed down from one generation to the next. The symbols and stones were kept safe, reminders of a time when something greater touched the earth. People continued to look to the sky with hope, waiting for the day when the visitors might return. But whether they came back or not, the visitors had left something more important: the chance for humans to see themselves differently and to choose a better future. In quiet moments, people would sometimes feel a soft presence like a gentle wind or a warm light, reminding them that the universe was watching and waiting. And in those moments they knew that the story was not over. The visitors had come and gone, but their message stayed alive in the hearts of many, an invitation to care, to change, and to dream of a world where humans and nature could live together in peace. Time passed, and the world slowly but surely began to change. People remembered the visitors, not as a frightening invasion, but as a quiet reminder that life on Earth was fragile and precious. The mysterious symbols, the glowing stones, and the stories about the man from the village became part of a larger truth that many felt deep inside. The planet needed care, and humans were its guardians. Around the world, more people started to listen to the Earth, Cities created parks and green spaces. Farmers used better ways to grow food without hurting the soil. Rivers and oceans were cleaned. Animals were protected. People learned that small actions mattered, and many believed that this was the real message left by the visitors. Schools taught children about kindness, respect, and the importance of nature. Art, music, and stories were inspired by the strange symbols and the visit from the stars. Communities came together, sharing their dreams for a better world. The visitors' silent message became a spark that slowly lit the hearts of many. Though the visitors had never returned, their presence was felt in quiet ways. On clear nights, people looked up at the stars and wondered if they were being watched, not in fear, but with hope. The stars seemed brighter, almost like a promise that they were not alone. The man from the village became a legend. People told stories about his strange powers, his connection to the earth, and how he disappeared as mysteriously as the visitors had. Some believed he had become a part of the earth itself, a spirit watching over the forests, rivers, and mountains. The scientist who had studied the symbols never stopped searching. She believed that one day, humans might fully understand the message the visitors left behind. She worked with others around the world, sharing knowledge and ideas, hoping that humanity would be ready if the visitors returned. At times, strange things still happened. Some people saw flashes of light in the sky or heard soft music in the wind. Others found more glowing stones hidden in the earth. These moments were rare but powerful reminders that the universe was still connected to the earth. Many wondered why the visitors came and left so quickly. Perhaps they were explorers, learning about Earth and waiting to see how humans would grow. Maybe they were guardians, giving a gentle warning before it was too late. Or maybe their visit was a test, a quiet way to see if humanity could choose to care for its home. Whatever the reason, the visitor's story changed the world forever. It taught people to look beyond themselves, to listen to the planet, and to dream of a future where humans and nature lived together in balance. Though the visitors never returned, their message lived on in the actions of people who cared. It was a story of hope, responsibility, and connection, a reminder that every person has the power to make a difference. And so, beneath the endless sky, with stars shining like silent watchers, life on Earth continued, changed but filled with promise. The visitors may have left, but the story they began was just the start of something much bigger. The future was in the hands of those who dared to listen, to care, and to believe in a better world.